Hello again, this is Randall Root. In exercise 3.3, you take a look at the current assets you have, that being the publications database, and compare it to any documentation that you have created so far. The idea is to go through and create a more refined plan for the solution you're going to create. So in this one, you compare what you have in reality inside of your publications database, pubs, and start contrasting that to any documentation that you may have come up with during the interview process. So you'll have to go through, make connections to the pubs database. You may notice a few things. We wrote the book where at the very end of the development cycle for SQL 2012, and at that point it was they were hoping it was going to come out by 11. So if there's a few 2011 notations or the code name Delaney, those were supposed to be excised from the book, but they didn't make it. So sorry about that. Just ignore them. Of course, it is all applicable to 2012. Anyway, as you go through here, you'll make a connection to your server. And remember that if you're just using a default installation, a default instance, you can just use the word local or localhost. And remember that somebody thought it would be really cool if you put parentheses around the word local, but any other combination doesn't have those lovely decorations. So it's just localhost, no the parentheses. Heck, for that matter, you can just use a period. A single period does the same thing. But if you're using, if you're going through and using a named instance, you'll have to put in the name of your server, local, localhost, period, and then a backslash and the name of your installation, your instance. For example, when I installed SQL 2012 on my machine, I gave a name of SQL 2012. It wasn't the most inspired name, but hey, it worked. My co-author Karen, on the other hand, went ahead and used the code name Microsoft was using during development called Delaney. But of course, when you did your installation, you could have called it anything you wanted. So just make sure that you know what the connection is, and in the server name, go ahead and put that. Then once you're connected, you'll need to navigate to the pubs database. During the setup files, which comes with the downloadable book content, you'll find a script for creating the pubs database. When you double click on that script and run it, what happens is that you'll end up with the pubs database. SQL 2012 did make one kind of weird change. They changed something called SPDB options so that it was no longer useful. And as such, you'll get an error message saying that there's a problem when you run the script. This is perfectly normal and will not impact anything. It's just rather annoying. Again, sorry about that. As part of writing the book ahead of time. But be that as it may, once you run that script, you'll end up with a pubs database, and you'll be able to go through and start looking at the individual tables. And you can actually click on a table in the tree view here and ask it to review the top 1,000 rows. Another thing that's kind of handy is to go through and create a database diagram, and you can do that right here by right-clicking on the database diagram. And actually, I'll give some information about that. Still, when you did that, you'd end up with pretty much a view like this. And so, whether or not you want to make your own diagram or just use the one I provided in the book, that's fine by me. Things you're looking for are, what are the names of the tables? Are the tables all uppercase or lowercase named? Do they have consistent namings on their columns? What are the columns that are available? Just kind of getting an overview of what are the tools at your disposal for creating the BI solution. Once you kind of have the general idea, then you start going through and deciding which tables would be appropriate to your solution. In our example, we're looking at information about sales. So what books have been sold and by which store. And that being the case, since that's the focus of our BI solution, you go through and examine the different tables and see whether or not they would be important. So for example, there's a jobs table in the database. Let me scroll back up here. I know scrolling is not much fun on a video, but sorry about that. There's a jobs table, and the jobs table basically describes, what job a particular employee does. It sounds like it might be interesting, but then you track it down a little bit further and you find out that it's linked to the employees table. And the employees table is a list of some employees that are associated with some publishers. The information is not very complete, nor does it seem to be very accurate. And one of the things that will really kill a BI solution is for you to have data that is not consistent, accurate, or verifiable. So if you're in doubt, you should probably leave it out. In this case, the jobs that employees of some other company, the publishers that you buy your books from, a little bit suspect. We would go ahead and leave it out, at least for version 1 of the data warehouse. Anyway, that would be some of the arguments that you would go through, or issues you'd go through and examine as you're looking at the current data that somebody has when you're making a BI solution. And this exercise is designed to kind of give you an idea of how that process would go through. You'd go through that process. The method is very, very similar no matter what type of BI solution you're doing. Basically, you come up with an idea about what you want to accomplish in your BI solution, and then you examine what the data that you currently have available, decide whether or not you can implement some or all of your desires. And that's what this exercise is designed to mimic. Once again, there's not that much to do in here. Basically, you go through and look at the data and try to decide what to leave in and what to haul out. When you're all done, should have a much better understanding of the current data in the pubs database, which is good because we use the pubs database and its data throughout the rest of the book. So a pretty long exercise. Take your time, examine the data. If you're very familiar with pubs, this will go pretty quickly. If you're not, if it's completely new to you, again, just take some time. You're going to be using it throughout the rest of the book, so time spent here is probably worthwhile. Hope this made doing the exercise a little bit more approachable and understandable. That's it for this video.